Hello, thank you so much for joining me today. This is probably going to end up being a pretty quick video. It is a very simple alteration that you can make to doll clothing that does not have an open back to give it an open back. This is nice because it makes it a lot easier to put on and take off without disassembling your doll, which sometimes people are nervous to do with smart dolls. Sometimes people are sewing for dolls that don't come apart as easily. I wanted to put this out in the world and, I don't know, maybe even encourage sellers to offer more options with simple, easy closing backs, because I know some people have mobility issues that can also come into play, and it feels like it would be a nice thing to have more options for people. So with that in mind, let's jump in. Hello! So this idea came up I think in the comments, actually. Somebody was excited that one of my patterns had back closure, and I thought, well, you know, that's not something that's terribly hard to add to almost anything, as long as you know what you're doing. So I thought I would show you what to do. This is just my simple $3, well, currently $3 t-shirt pattern. It's crazy simple. It's fast to sew together. I thought it'd be a perfect example. This method will work with most things that are not completely form-fitting. It works excellent with like t-shirts and things with jersey knits and stuff like that. And it's just kind of my go-to when I need to add a back closure. So we're going to do that with this. The front is not going to change at all. We're going to set that aside and we'll cut that out by itself. And then the back, we need to find our center back. If I recall, this grain line is actually our center back, but for symmetrical things, if you don't know for sure, you can just fold them in half and find it. And yeah, it's mostly, oh yeah, it's actually the center. It's just my folding abilities aren't the best. So, my folding and my cutting abilities, it's fine. It's not something that'll matter very much. So once you've found your center, you can just cut along that line. This pattern piece is going to go from a cut 1 to a cut 2. So we're actually going to just discard the half that we don't need. The half that we do need, we want to add on 3/4 of an inch. And the easiest way to add that 3/4 of an inch, this is a number that I found basically by trial and error. I like how it works. So I'm going to use my ruler. I'm lining up my 3/4 of an inch line with my paper through the clear ruler. And I'm just going to draw that line in. And then I'm just going to line this up along with the line that I drew and tape it down, provided I know where my tape is. Okay, tape is found. I am weirdly frugal with tape because it's one of those things that I always forget to buy, so I never seem to have enough of. So I just do it in little patches, but you can just tape the whole thing, it's fine. Okay. So with that taped down, I'm actually just gonna cut off the excess paper, get that out of our hair, and you can, I'm going to transfer my straight line, my 3/4 line to the front just because I think it's cuter with the logo. I could have done this the other way and not had to do this part. It's not important, don't worry about it. Okay. So this is still our center front line. And the reason we add 3/4 of an inch is because I want to go out 1/4 of an inch so that, because both sides are getting 1/4 of an inch, there's going to be a 1/2 inch of overlap, and then the remaining 1/2 inch is so that I have something to fold over to provide some stability. It's a lot of math that's not important. So now this bottom, I'm just going to use that straight line, line it up with my center back, match it up to here, and that gets me a 90-degree angle. Because I just want this to come straight out. This is all seam allowance. We're not changing the pattern, like the base of the pattern any. We're just adding in that seam allowance. So we're going to cut this, and we're going to cut this. Oops. And we're going to tape this side so that it stops flopping around, because that drives me a little crazy. Alright, and then you don't need to add this part, but I will sometimes just draw in a dotted line at that basically this is where the fabric is going to fold, is that this is a 1/2 inch and this is our 1/4 inch. It's not necessary though. So this now becomes back cut 2. And when you cut this, you want, if your fabric has a front and a back, you want one going this way and one going this way, so that you have symmetrical parts. And that's honestly it. That's as far as the drafting goes. It's quite straightforward. I'm going to cut this out and then I will show you how I would prefer to sew it together. First thing I do is line up the shoulder seams with right sides facing together. After I sewed the shoulder seams together, I did finish the center back edge, and I finished the edges of the sleeves as well with the shoulder seam allowance pushed towards the back, and that's just kind of standard preference. From there, I'm going to finish the collar in the same way that I did the sleeves. I also went ahead and top stitched, finishing those edges completely, basically just folded it over and top stitched with a double needle. From there, we are going to go on to the side seams, which I do take care to line up pretty well, especially around the sleeve, because that is something that's more likely to be seen, and I sew those together. Once sewn together, I did go ahead and finish the bottom in the same way that I did the collar and the sleeves, and then we finally get on to our center back, the star of the show. So I highly recommend being very precise when you fold this over your 1/2 inch and ironing it to make sure that it stays. I jumped out of frame there to do a quick iron, and that really helps it stay in place while you're sewing. You can also pin it too if you want. So once that's been sewn down, you can use either a normal straight stitch or do like me and not change your needle out and just use your double needles still. They both work. It's got that 1/2 inch overlap, so these snaps are 3/8 inch snaps, and I really do prefer them over the 1/4 inch snaps because they're more likely to work in more situations. 1/4 inch snaps do work for 2 layers of jersey like this, but they don't work for much else. Their little prongs are too short. Other things that work, as you saw, was the Velcro. Just a 1/2 inch Velcro works great. There's also, you can use hooks and eyes, they're not my favorite. As you can see on screen here, I am going ahead and marking my snap placements. I did quick math and decided the math was complicated and just kind of estimated, but you can be more precise than I was here. That's totally your prerogative. I did end up regretting using only 4 snaps for this length. I think 5 would have probably sat a little bit better on the final product, and you'll see in a sec. But I go ahead and use my little snap plier, and they're usually pretty cheap. You can find them at Joann's for sure and online, but I find they don't push the snap down enough. So I use these pliers. I prefer the ones that don't have the grip, and I go around and crimp the edges a little extra. You can see on that one I did mess up. I only crimped one edge and it actually popped the snap apart completely. So that's why I have the 2 pliers. I relearned my lesson. Use them on each side of the snap first, and then you can go around and crimp the edges. Then I use the little nubs from the snaps themselves to kind of push an indent into the shirt, and then I mark that to see it better. This is a great way to make sure that you don't get bulges between your snaps, because the placement of the snaps is secondary to the placement being equal between both sides, in my opinion. That bulge when it's being worn, I do not like at all. But if like one is 1/8 of an inch, farther away from another, that's to me less of an issue. So I go around on these ones as well, and I just smoosh them a little bit better to make sure that they don't pop apart later. And then we get to try it on. This is always the fun part. And as you can see, just having the back open makes it a lot easier to coax it around hands. And then you can just pop those together. In the end, I should have used 5 snaps. I think that using 4 just left room for that little bit of a bulge near her bum, and I'm not a huge fan of that. However, from the front, the shirt looks excellent, and I think it is an easy fix. Just use an extra snap in back and you're good to go. It looks exactly like the shirts that don't have it do, and it's so much easier to put on. So highly recommend giving this project a try if you're new to drafting and want something simple and satisfying. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a good one. Bye bye.